spoke. Obviously, got Ben on board. Our relationship has been outstanding. Everything that I learned about him through the interview process has played out really well in person as well. And you could really tell that through the construction of his staff. Very thoughtful in everything that he does. Strategic in terms of the setup and who he wants and the chemistry within the building and the different personalities and experiences that everyone brings to the group, which is really important. And you can see how that's going to play out as we get into the off season, developing our players, as well as to in season, preparing week in and week out. And I've been really happy with the staff. You can feel the energy in the room. Guys like Dennis Allen bringing a lot of different experiences into the building to help support Ben as well as the entire coaching staff. And then the energy that we have on the offensive side as well. These guys are juiced up. It's a totally different feel these days for the group that's in there. Want to say thank you to our football ops department. I challenged them before we even got into the coaching search to be the best in the world at onboarding our staff. Coming from experience, someone that's coming from outside the organization how fast and how efficient and how well you're set up can be critical and essential to really just getting up and running, getting your staff going and all of that. So they did a really good job from relocation to getting the computer systems up, the tutorials, and really just getting our coaching staff to understand our roster, both on the field and off the field. So really good start by them, and I appreciate them for doing that. We've made a lot of progress so far. Really started off getting with the coordinators and Ben and talking about what's the scheme that they want to run. What are some of the changes we're going to need to make offensively and defensively in terms of the traits, characteristics of the players that play in different positions and how they're going to move on the field within the scheme. We also had opportunity to review the roster, to go through, to see what fits, what doesn't fit, what changes we're going to have to make to be adaptable for players to be highly effective in this new scheme with the new coaches. Those conversations have been great. And then really our pro staff did a good job getting them up and running on free agent process. So when we come here, start watching the draft prospects, we can start putting this puzzle piece together and build this team the right way so we can get off to a hot start with this new system that we're in. Want to give a shout out to Matt Feinstein, promoted him to VP of Football Administration. He earned that, put a lot of time and effort into really healing our cap situation from the time we walked in to being very flexible so we can accomplish a lot both in the years past and also as we move forward. Being healthy with your cap and your cash spending is critical to having success in this league and sustaining success. And then obviously transactions, we released Gerald Everett and DeMarcus Walker just a few days ago. With that situation, anytime you kind of have gray in terms of fit with the scheme change and their contract situation, I think giving them the opportunity, giving their representation opportunity to come to the combine, get their names out there, they can get a good seat at the table with the team before all the seats are taken. So from there, I'll open up the questions.
Welcome, everyone, to Bear Stuff with Aldo, and Danny Shimon will be joining me briefly. This is our 11th show as I'm experimenting with a few things to try to determine how I am going to cover the 2025 Chicago Bears season. There are going to be some changes here at the Ballroom Network. Nothing is written in concrete yet, so I won't make any announcements, but there will be some changes as I try to do a little less work and get more credit. Anyway, what a day at Indianapolis for Chicago Bears fans. I titled this Polls and the Combine, this episode, but it really should have been Ben Johnson and the Combine because we've heard Ryan Poles before, and we haven't heard much of Ben Johnson. And what he displayed today was a kind of a virtual maestro performance, talking to the media, answering questions, showing this air of confidence. It was very, very impressive. It's unlike any coach that I have seen. I don't know. I hate to, say all the way to Ditka, but Lovey was not that great with the media. He was okay, but he wasn't that great. I just got a really good feeling. And then reading other people's reactions to Ben Johnson, people who are not necessarily Chicago Bears fans, they work for the national media and stuff. He got A+ all around the board. So it was a fantastic day for Bears fans to get to listen to Ben Johnson, and we'll have some sound clips of that as well. And as for Ryan Post, I thought he did a nice job. He didn't seem as nervous as he's, Danny has complained about that a number of times, and I have too. He just doesn't exude that confidence. Well, today he sort of did, and I posted up on X that there could be a chance that this head coach could make him a more confident and better leader as a general manager. That's possible. We've seen it in all walks of life. On the playing field, a defensive tackle leaves the team, and all of a sudden a defensive end who had 15 sacks the year before now is only getting 5. And we see it in our own work lives. A co-worker is gone, and all of a sudden the performance of the entire department is gone, and on and on. And so it is quite possible that the collaboration that Poles and Ben Johnson have could lead to better results and could lead us to feeling more confident about Ryan Poles. And I know a lot of people still have a lot of confidence in Poles, but I'm telling you, there was a difference in polls today, and just those opening remarks that we played in the first 5 minutes of the show, I think was an example of that. That was off the cuff. He wasn't reading from index cards, and he covered several major issues, starting with the loss of Virginia McCaskey and sending his condolences to the McCaskey family, to the part that we saw where he covered all aspects of what's new over the last couple of months since he's talked to the media, and then we'll see in just a few minutes him answering some questions. So with that, I want to invite the latest, newest member to the YouTube community, content creator. His name happens to be a name familiar to all of you. His name is Danny Shimon. Danny, how are you, my friend?
Aldo, how are you, man? It's been a minute. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while.
I know.
Your beard got all fuller now, a little more whiter. What's going on there, my friend?
Yeah,
good for men. We'll take care of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, really. Running around with my grandson, I just feel like, man, forget the cleanliness. He's going to vomit all over me anyway. But
you still look good, my friend. You still look good.
Thank you. I've been having a good time with my grandson. How's your family, too? You got a couple of kids. How are they doing?
Yeah, been great. My daughter's, junior in high school, so she's talking about college already, and it makes me feel older every time she talks about that. And then my son, who's 11, is starting to get into the scouting thing with me. He's been watching some tape, and he's looking forward to watching the combine with me this weekend. So it's been fun. It's been fun, and
that's great.
Just as they grow and you see their, what they're into in terms of their likes and dislikes and their interests and all that stuff. It changes. It's pretty cool.
Well, in terms of having a role model as a scout, having you as his father is a great thing for him. He's going to see your work ethic and how you break down tape. That's going to be awesome. And we can see your work at your new YouTube page. It's called Danny Shimon Scout, and that's all one word, Danny Shimon Scout.
Actually, that's incorrect. It's Shimon Draft Scout.
Oh, Jesus. Shimon
Draft
drafts.
guide. Yeah. Earlier, he had it correct, and then
Yes, on the comment section. So here is the rewrite there. Shimon Draft Scout, all one word for those of you listening on audio podcast. And Danny has broken down about 10 prospects already. Here's the page so you get an idea of what it looks like. Shimon Draft Scout. So you've broken down a number of prospects. Tell me what your goal is with the YouTube page.
yeah, I'm getting a lot of people reach out to me and ask me about certain players, and I just figured I'd give them an opportunity to go on and watch, my scouting reports. And so I've taken my goal here is to basically what I've been doing here for the past, umpteen years here with the barrooms. I just wanted to kind of, give our listeners and Bears fans and draft fans all around it, an opportunity to go and take a look at my scouting evaluation of players. And my goal here is to, like I said, just like here at the bar, I wanted to, scout players for the Bears, specifically for their scheme, for, their new coaching staff now. And if it's, going in the future, their coaching staff at the present time. And I'm looking at their needs in terms of what they want or what they, in terms of lacking, so on, so on a roster. And, things will change as free agency starts. So right now, as you can see, I've posted about seven videos about offensive linemen. And some of these offensive linemen could be first round guys, some are second round guys. I have another one coming up possibly tomorrow, and Josh Simmons, who is the big tackle from Ohio State, coming up there as well. So that's going to be, because the main focus right now for the Bears, obviously their needs, we've talked about it multiple times, is the trenches, right? Offensive, defensive lines. Well, I want to get about 10 offensive linemen out there. Then I'm going to hit up about 10 more defensive linemen. Give the folks an idea in terms of the talent available. Some of these may not be, the 10th overall pick, but some of these could be, if they trade down, could be options later in the first round. Some of these could be options or will be options in the top of the second round. And again, once free agency hits and say they go and they sign 3 offensive linemen, then I know, all right, so we might not need, the 3 interior guys. Like, let's go and say, look at safeties now, for example, another need, maybe then tight end. So it's going to continue to evolve as the Bears needs evolve. But I just wanted to give, our listeners and fans who reach out to me and just say, hey, these are my scouting reports. I did give the evaluation. I have some breakdown in terms of the player, highlight them so you guys can see who I'm talking about. And some of the highlights are, I try and match the highlights to, what I'm talking about in terms of the weaknesses and also the positives as well. So I'll just kind of give you an idea of the player. And once, hopefully, the Bears draft a couple of these guys, and I'll go ahead and just spring that out again and then give you guys a refresher in terms of, what this guy or what this player, is going to be and how I project them at the next level. But yeah, it's just similar to what I do here, but now it's just going to be on my YouTube page. Just kind of, my focus is the Bears, their needs, and how I see them. And then I take the players that are available in the draft and I break them down with highlights and, obviously the full scouting report.
I've been telling Danny for some time now, you got to go out there and establish your brand. He's such a good scout. He should get to 1,000 followers relatively quick. I'm sure that by the end of the 2025 draft, he will have several hundred, maybe 1,000. And as the months go on and the years go on, he should get thousands and thousands of followers because he does such good work. Danny, I'm happy for you.
Appreciate it. And then to all listeners, if there's any players that you feel like you want me to post a video on and scout, break them down, just hit me up either on Twitter or even
the YouTube comments,
and comments or whatnot. Yeah, and I will try and get to them as many as I can, and and then just post them up there. And like I said, if this is going to be an interactive project where I need the fans to chime in and say, hey, give us this player, and I'll pull up the tape and give me some time, and then I'll go ahead and do a breakdown and we'll post it up on the YouTube page. So.
Awesome. See, you're getting more and more people. I think I was the first subscriber today, and I think we're closing in on 20 plus. So Jason subscribed. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
And yeah, again, use the YouTube comments and send your reactions to the actual report that Danny issued and also suggestions on stuff that you'd like to see on his page.
I have to thank the Podfather here because he helped me get set up with everything. So I do appreciate Aldo for your assistance in terms of getting that page up and running.
Not as good as J2K would have done. That guy is a master graphic artist. He is so damn good. Hope you join us today, J2K, to just interact with us in the chat. And with that, let us discuss the press conferences today at Indianapolis. Not in this press conference was this quote from the head coach of the Chicago Bears: "No block, no rock." And I think he made that on one of the radio shows. Could have been 670 The Score Scottish. If you know, let me know. And he was referring to DJ Moore. I think that was in the context of when he said that line. And so BJ is laying down the law. You better work your ass off. If you don't, as a blocker, you ain't going to get the ball if you're in the skill position. That's pretty cool to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about it earlier, Aldo, and I thought it was just me. And I'm like, now every time I hear the Bears head coach talk, before I cover my ears and go run and hide, I'm like, oh my God. Now I'm like, wait, am I still like in that honeymoon phase where I'm like, everything this guy says, I'm like, oh, this guy is making sense, but it's not. It's just common sense. And you know, that was you said that was something he said in a different interview, but just in the press gathering today from the combine, you know, I put down some notes in terms of what he said. One of the first things, and I've been on here how long, although you can attest to this, the listeners can attest to this, I've been just wanting them to focus on the offensive line. He said that this is going to be a physical offensive line. It all starts up front, and it's going to be predicated on the run game. And that's what I've been screaming for, asking for. Finally have someone says that. And then the other thing what he said interesting was about Caleb Williams. You know, we talked about, you know, in terms of, oh, he's going to be great for Caleb in terms of the system, in terms of the offense. And he said that he's going to break it down to the point where the way Caleb calls the plays in the huddle, the way he breaks the huddle. I mean, this guy's so meticulous in terms of detail, in terms of how he wants his quarterback to play, you know, calling the play, you know, pointing out the protections, breaking the huddle and stuff like that. That's how far he's going to break it down. And the other thing I caught from his interview was DeAndre Swift. You know, that was the guy that I'm like could be a guy that the Bears could move on from. But he spoke highly of DeAndre Swift and said he could be someone that he's familiar with him obviously from days in Detroit, and he's got some skill set that he's going to go ahead and utilize in this offense. So I think those are some things I took from there. And then defensively, real quick, he praised Dennis Allen, the hiring of Dennis Allen. The one thing he said that is that the front four guys are going to disrupt the quarterback, and the back four guys are going to disrupt the receiver. So we're talking more press coverage. We're talking more bump around at the line of scrimmage. So we're talking some corners here that are going to be aggressive at the line of scrimmage as opposed to the typical drop back and play zone, cover two stuff that we've seen here in the last couple of years.
Yeah, he referred to it as complimentary football. Here's a portion of that soundbite, 20 seconds long.
If you don't have that star power, that's okay. You can still be an effective unit. And so, we want as many playmakers and stars as we possibly can. But at the same time, we know that complementary football wins in this league. We know that 11 guys playing as one also wins in this league.
Yeah, he talked about that within the context of the question about acquiring superstars. Can you acquire another superstar to help Montez Sweat and so forth? And he's trying to put a very positive light that if you don't have superstars, because they're hard to acquire, there aren't a lot available, at least in this draft. This is considered not a stars draft, but a starter draft, a lot of good starters. Mm-hmm. And so for him to really put emphasis that you can get, 11 good football players and you can get them to play complementary football, you're going to win some football games. I loved his outlook on that.
I took it as we're going to get 11 guys that are going to rally to the football. They're going to play as a unit. But what also he could do is he could go ahead and coach these guys up, right? So we haven't seen something here lately is we haven't seen player development, right? We haven't seen guys take that next step in their careers, whether they come in and they make a splash and they kind of flatline after that, there isn't that next bump up. And, I can't remember last time, maybe you guys can correct me, last time a Bears player that was drafted, maybe Jalen Johnson, okay, but we could do that one, but never, kind of got better and better, got coached up and became, a high echelon player. Jalen Johnson could be one there as well, but you could talk about, but, in terms of now, we're talking about bringing in guys, young guys. You talked about this is not a great in terms of superstar laden draft, but it's a good draft in terms of depth throughout the first 3 or 4 rounds. you can bring in good players and you can coach them up and maybe make them better players. The couple of things that I've heard, in terms of his coaching staff, that the two guys that really I hear all the time in terms of guys that are really kind of are look for them to make it. Well, actually, I should think about three guys that are going to be, impact here in Chicago. One is, he mentioned in the press conference, Antoine Randall, the receivers coach, who was also the assistant head coach. I think he's going to make that receiver room competitive and better, right? Ray talked about what the comments were in terms of DJ Moore and blocking. Dan Rochar, the offensive line coach, I've heard some really good things about him in terms of, obviously he was a former Saints offensive line coach. He had one of the better, offensive lines in New Orleans there in the NFL. But again, you need the horse up front there for him. But I think he's a guy who's going to be a teacher, guy can coach, power gap scheme, can do some, zone stuff as well. And a sneaky good hire, or great hire, I should say, is Al Harris, the cornerbacks coach. They got him from Dallas, and he's a guy that will make, I believe, Jalen Johnson better. I think he'll challenge him to take his game to another level, and I think he'll make Tyreek Stevenson a much better cornerback as well. I think that's the one player to take a look at and see Tyreek Stevenson's jump, that takes under the coaching of Al Harris and the secondary coach.
Yeah. He also, I think the guy's name is Friend. No, it's Freed. He was on the Bears
Harry
staff.
Friedman, I believe, is right.
Right. They also talked about that. They have these 5-minute meetings every morning, and they're going over the process of using analytics and the process of how to handle the last minute, time management, how to handle time management and the challenging of plays and so forth. And Ben says, explain it to me like I'm a rookie quarterback. I want to know all of the basics. I want to know as detailed as much as possible. I think it's a 30-minute meeting or just a quick meeting in the morning that they go over that. And that is, to me, a great way. Ben Johnson has talked about getting all of the coaches aligned on how to teach the players what works best for them, where they perhaps have had problems, so that the coaches can then inject ideas. Well, maybe try this or maybe try that. And so it's a very holistic, cohesive coaching staff that everyone knows what that guy's doing, what that guy's doing. You got to have an organization like that. And it seems like with past Chicago Bears coaching staffs, there wasn't that type of unity. And of course, I'm looking at this through rose-colored glasses because I'm a Bears fan, but it really does legitimately feel like a different voice coming out of the Bears coaching staff than ever before in my days following the Bears. What do you think?
Right. It's not Trace Armstrong in a back offices, pushing his guys up front. Mark Helfrich was Matt Nagy's first offensive coordinator. He didn't know Mark Helfrich. He never really used Mark Helfrich, but that was a guy that he recommended. That's just an example there. But he said he went outside the norm. He went outside his friend circle to hire these coaches. He's getting to know these. He interviewed them, and he went ahead and brought them in. And he talked about some different examples in terms of what he had. Some guys like Press Taylor, background with Chip Kelly. Obviously Eric Bieniemy, the background he has with Andy Reid and stuff like that. And so the other thing I like is similar to the model that they use in Detroit. Was they're bringing in former players, right? Bieniemy's a former player. Al Harris is a former player. Antoine Randall is a former player. JT Barrett, the quarterback coach, is a former player. Matt Giordano, the safeties coach, is a former player. They're bringing in former players that have played in the league and kind of giving these players, a little bit of a head start or some so players can go ahead and have some respect for these players and listen to these coaches and know that these guys have been through the same wars, trenches, and that they are guys that they could go and look at and listen to.
Yeah, really good stuff. And let me play a couple of back-to-back sound bites. One from Ryan Poles talking about how this team is becoming aligned with the coaching staff and the football administrative team, the pro personnel, the draft scouts, and so forth. And then also here, Ben Johnson's thoughts on it. So here is Poles, first of all, about getting on the same page.
Yeah, so it starts with just individual conversations with us sitting down and going through it. But I think the big thing is bringing the groups together. So our entire front office got together. We went through position by position, the criteria of what he's looking to do. And then we did it again when all of our scouts flew in for our draft meetings, went through that once again, just to, again, understand and have a clear vision of what we're looking for, because that does alter the way that you stack your board and prioritize in free agency.
I know you're very collaborative with everybody that you work with in terms of decisions, whether it's Ian Cunningham or whether it was Matt Eberflus before. Will Ben Johnson have more say than maybe his predecessor in terms of what he wants or what he thinks he needs on offense or defense?
No, I think it'll remain the same. We're constantly talking about how we need to go about improving our football team and adding to our football team. So those conversations will be happening almost on a daily basis, which is important in any relationship between the front office and the coaching staff, specifically a GM and a head coach.
What's so beautiful about the coaching staff that we put together is I didn't hire a bunch of my friends. I went outside of my circle on purpose because I wanted to collect a different mix of experience, of energy, ideas, and we're all going to make it come together, and it's going to be the Chicago Bears going forward. And so it can look a number of different ways. Eric Bieniemy's got a lot of experience in the gun run game and what they did in Kansas City, obviously. And Declan has a lot of success from the Sean Payton tree, and Press Taylor has a lot of success from the Chip Kelly all the way on. And so we've got a lot of library, if you will, to draw from, and we'll see it all come together once we get our hands on these guys.
There is, of course, risk associated with that, of bringing in people that you've never worked before. But if you have a great leader, and hopefully Ben Johnson is, he can get all of these diverse voices that are going to hopefully debate with each other and do it in a professional manner and not be yes men, because that's his design. His design was, I don't want to bring in yes men. I want to bring in guys that will challenge my thinking, that will aid in many different ways and stuff. So while it's a little bit risky, Danny, I do think that he will make it work.
Well, we could take it the opposite, right? Matt Eberflus brought all his buddies in from the Colts, and two of his coach had to be fired by HR. So we could take it the other way. And they're all yes men. And actually, he didn't even last year. Eberflus didn't want to bring in Kingsbury because he that threatened his job security. So I mean, that's Ben Johnson is a guy. And again, I know he's a rookie head coach. He could suck. He could be one of the worst coaches ever. But just the way he talks, the way he carries himself, the way he presents himself, he's comfortable in his own skin. He knows what he wants. He waited for his opportunity. You passed up previous job opportunities for when he was ready, and he's ready to go now. And it just feels like he's got a presence about him, that he's a guy that he knows that he's ahead of that coaching staff. You know, he's going to delegate to his assistant coaches, and there's a way he wants this team to be coached up. He wants this team to be a certain way. Again, it's just an impression I'm getting. Could I be totally off? Sure. But it's a different feeling than, like we talked about earlier. It's a different feeling from what we get from when our head coach talks, than what we've gotten in the previous seasons, right? Between whether it's Matt.
If you don't have that.
Sorry, I accidentally pressed the button. Finish your thought, please.
No, it's just a different feeling. We get when he talks. It gives you some content. It tells you some insight in terms of what he's thinking, what he was planning. And before with Eberflus and with Matt Nagy, we got some gibberish and stuff like that. Especially with Eberflus, it obviously Eberflus had issues in front of the camera. I don't think Ben Johnson has any sort of issues where they have to take him to train him how to act in front of a camera or anything like that. So
that's for sure. One of the things that again, he said so many things that were inspiring. One of the things that he said is that we can't turn over the offensive line's production very quickly. You could do it in 1 year.
I think there's a number of teams that did that last year. The Panthers come to mind when they went out in free agency and got a couple top guards and really changed the dynamic of their offense. And you saw them clicking there in the second half of the season once they started to really gel. So there's no question that you can change the dynamic of a room just like that. That particular room, it does take a little bit of time for five guys to come together, especially if you have to deal with the attrition and the injuries, for five guys to be working on the same page. It's when you watch the tape and you come away with, I think I made the statement in my opening press conference that that's an area we have to get better. That doesn't necessarily mean we need 5 new starters. because all it takes is one individual to blow up a play. And so we're just identifying where we can get a little bit better, and we're going to continue to raise that floor, and we'll find the right mix of 5 to 8, 9, 10 guys.
So, Danny, what it's going to take is being aggressive in free agency, so that way you can supplement those problem areas in the draft. This is Ryan Poles about being aggressive in free agency.
What's your willingness to be more aggressive at the top of the market this year?
Yeah, I think the clearer the vision, the more aggressive you can be, and that's important. So you want to be selective in free agency, because it just historically, like if you look at it, like it can tell you, and you can learn from that. But if there's certain players that kind of hit all the check boxes that you need, there's really no reason to hold back. Like, I feel like you can be aggressive in those situations.
What do you think about what Mr. Poles is saying there? Do you think he's kind of hinting that maybe we're going to go after a Trey Smith or a high-priced player?
I think they'll be aggressive in free agency, and the whole Trey Smith. I love Trey Smith, but if to pay a guard $25 million, which is what it sounds like it's going to be. I mean, that's there's going to be competitors for him, first of all. So don't everyone, if they don't get Trey Smith, it's not the end of the world. There are other good players out there they can bring in. But I think a key thing there, he just said, Ryan Poles said, is it's easier to be aggressive when you have a clear vision up top. Meaning that before, it sounds like Eberflus, who I've said multiple times was a defensive coordinator masquerading as a head coach, he knew his thing in terms of defense, what he needed. He had no idea about the offense. And the guys they brought in, offensive coordinator, whether it's Luke Getsy or Shane Waldron, they didn't have a clear vision. They didn't have a clear understanding in terms of what they needed or what they wanted. So I think they kind of left Ryan Poles kind of saying, all right, well, this is the kind of players you want on an offensive line. This is the kind of players, but here he's got a clear vision. It sounds like Ben Johnson and his staff has told Ryan Poles, these are the kind of players we want. This is, and then I think Johnson touched on it earlier in his press conference. Physical. He wants physical players on the offense and defensive line. So that's why I'm looking at guys, scouting guys now that are 300 plus pounds, no more 290 pound centers that went up on their ass post snap right away. He wants guys that go block forward, talking about more power gap stuff. So I think that's what he's looking at. So he's got a clear vision in terms of what his head coach wants. And again, going back to free agency, Trey Smith is a guy that everybody wants, but there's other guys they could bring in there for like a short-term fix here, and then go get some guys in the draft, day 2 or day 3, and now you can coach him up. And when that guy's, you bring in a free agent, for example, Kevin Zeitler is a guy that I think the Bears should target if they go and get Trey Smith. Obviously, he's up there in years. He's 35 years old. He was with Detroit last year, but he was still very effective. He's a right guard. You don't get Trey Smith, you'll get a kid like Zeitler in for a year or 2 years, draft someone on the second or third day of the draft. Now you develop him, and when Zeitler's gone in a year or two, boom, plug and play.
Yeah, in J2K, I posted up one of his comments because he was on this show a week ago, and there was a strong debate. He feels like signing Trey Smith. He feels like you do. Signing Trey Smith to a $25 million contract is not a good idea because of the cap. And I feel differently. I feel that at a certain point, you got to start to go after blue chip players, like I think it was Vizzo said, or Scottish Bear. We got to sign the superstars, the players that are going to take you over to the top. And I disagree again with J2K, who says that the guard position is not a multiplier. That's just not so. Quarterbacks need room in the inside to step forward and fire those passes. Every quarterback will tell you that the most important part of a pocket is that of pass protection is that pocket, that they've got room to go up and down. And when you have a guy like a Trey Smith, he can make your center better and he can make your right tackle better. He's got experience. He's a bright guy. And I just feel like bringing him in is an automatic multiplier unless, of course, he gets hurt. What do you think, Danny?
So, yeah, so I don't think, it's not my money. And if they want to pay him $25 million, that's great. And Trey Smith is a great player. And I'm always just saying, if they don't get him, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end all be all if they don't get Trey Smith. And there's other options there. And I do, and I've been here before. I said you got to fortify the middle of the offensive line, because you fortify the middle of the offensive line, your tackles are okay. Where you can, even if Caleb gets outside pressure, he can step up in the pocket if that inside the offensive line is fortified. But the one thing in terms of a multiplier here, you're talking about Trey Smith. It's one guy, and the one thing that I kind of, and again, I love Trey Smith. I love him come out of Tennessee. I know why he dropped in the 6th round. But if KC is willing to let him go, okay, why, right? And they have a franchise quarterback they got to protect, right? And I understand the money is going to be absorbent, but maybe franchise him for a year, maybe transition tag. Then they're not even going to transition tag the guy. So again, I think he'd be a huge upgrade here at right guard. And I'm not going to knock the player if they sign him. Hey, that's a great signing. But I'm saying if they don't get him, there are other options like a Kevin Zeitler. But also, I just kind of sit back and say, why is KC? Last time we saw KC, their quarterback was getting pummeled. Why is KC willing to let him go? I mean, I know
they're not willing. There was an interview with Veach, the general manager of the Chiefs, and he said, "I think we can get it done." But if you read in between the words that he chose, he can't. He's got Bolton he needs to sign. They're already $20 million over the cap. It's just going to be so hard. They've got 3 contracts on that offensive line that are already $15 to $20 million area with Tooney. I think that the other tackle that was hurt, Juwan Taylor, and then one other player. So they just are feeling the pinch, the money pinch. They're not willingly let him go. They would love to have him back, but it's just not in the economics.
And if they do sign Trey Smith, they can't stop there, though, Aldo, right? They got to sign a center. I think they need a veteran center. I think the draft, kind of going through the draft, and it's funny because my top center coming into the draft is Jared Wilson from Georgia. Developmental kid. I think he's a day 3 pick. But I put on his tape now. He's going up against Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, and he just tore him to shreds. So what I'm trying to say is the center position in this draft is not that great. So I think you got to go out there. You got to get a veteran, whether it's a trade, whether it's signing a veteran free agent. So you can't just stop at Trey Smith. So if you get a Trey Smith and a center, all right, now you go get a guard in the draft. All right, now we're talking here. And like I talked about, in terms of your bringing competition for your tackles, that's fine as well. But if you don't get Trey Smith, and now you allocate some of the money on a defensive tackle or an edge guy or a center and a left guard, for example, let's see what happens. But I'm just saying, like, everyone's got Trey Smith coming to the Bears. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, there are other options, and let's see what they do here in terms of fortifying. But you're right. I agree with you. They got it. That inside that offensive line, they've got to fortify it from guard to the guard. I think now more so than a couple of weeks ago, it's paramount. I think they get a veteran center in here.
I totally agree. Drew Dahlman is a guy that is probably getting the most attention. It's not a great year for free agent centers, but there's a couple of other names out there that could at least be placeholders, and then we can acquire a young center who could be Caleb's center for the next 10 years. It probably won't happen this year, but maybe it can. Maybe they'll find somebody on day 3. I think on day 1 and day 2, they'll probably go guard, defensive line, and offensive tackle / guard. We'll see. We'll talk about some of the prospects in just a minute here, but I want to play a couple of more sound bites from today. This is polls talking about free agency, and the draft kind of squares up with their needs, so this is a good year to replace the tight end and add a running back and offensive line. This is a quick soundbite, 15 seconds.
We're starting to put that puzzle piece together, but what I like about really the pairing so far of free agency and the draft is I do believe that the supply of players are matching our needs, so there's going to be good opportunities.
Tell me why you agree with that, Danny.
Yeah, I've been saying it. Going into this draft, the deepest positions in this draft so far are the interior offensive line guys you can get 2nd, 3rd round. You can get guys that can come in and participate, either be a priority backup or even be a starter. Week 1. Tight end is one of the deepest tight end classes I've seen in recent memory. Running back is pretty deep. Okay, I think those are needs there as well. So the tackles aren't great. The tackle class isn't great. But like I said, they have, I believe, 2 tackles that they could go to war with, next year if they have, Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones or Karan Amargaji, however they want to do that there as well. So I think the interior offensive line is depth there. We got defensive tackles. There's some depth there as well. Running backs, there's depth there. Tight end, there's depth there. Receiver isn't that great. But they have a small receiver which they could probably fortify with a veteran free agent. We'll see how that goes there as well. Safety is a sneaky need for the Bears, and I think there's a good safety class in this draft class here as well. So I agree with Poles there in terms of free agency and more so the draft. It kind of lines up to what the Bears' needs are.
I've got a request for you already for your new YouTube page, Shimon Draft Scout. I want you to take a look at a guy who should be available in the 7th round. He's out of Eastern Michigan, the same school that Cooper Kupp went to. We've talked about him a little bit before, but the more and more I study this guy, the more and more I like. And that's Efton Chisholm III, wide receiver out of Eastern Michigan. When I brought him up to Eric Galko on Gabriel Talks Football, Galko immediately reacted positively to this guy. He said that Chisholm is a guy that, given that he came from Eastern Michigan, you look at it a little more closely to see, is it the competition? Is it because he's being fed the ball over and over for him to put up some really tremendous stats? But he said that him and his scouting team for the Shrine Bowl game actually came away very impressed with Chisholm and think that Galko actually said, we've been getting calls from NFL teams to please invite him to the Shrine Bowl game because we're going to tell our GM, get him early in day 3 because he's so good. So please do some work on him so we can get your opinion.
He was at the East West Shrine practices. I did see I had the tape footage from the practices. I mean, yeah, he's a guy that quick slot guy in and out of his breaks, tough over the middle. Is a guy that pretty much fearless, and he's a good punt returner as well. So he gives you a lot of different options there. But I think you mentioned equated him to Cooper Kupp. I don't think he's at that level yet in terms of that type of receiver, but he's definitely a guy that I think will be available, like I said, day 3, and it could be a guy that can bring in as a 4th, 5th receiver and then have him work his way up.
Yeah. So do you think that, because I just saw this from Vizzo, that Poles hinted that there will be some tackle to compete with Braxton. Basically, I think what he said is there will be competition at the left tackle position, but he didn't actually say that they were bringing somebody in from the
He
outside.
just said that it's going to be open competition. So that, I took that as Karan Amargaji is going to be given a shot to beat Braxton Jones. Obviously, he's still Johnson's coming off that ankle injury, so we'll see how he is in terms of OTAs and where he's at when training camp starts. But I took it as, they're looking, and Ben Johnson said the same thing. They're looking at bringing the best 5 guys, right? Whether it's, in Karan Amargaji or it's Braxton Jones or, even Matt Pryor. I think Matt Pryor is a guy who did a pretty solid job. He's not great by any means of stretch of the imagination, but he's a solid veteran who could back up 4 spots on your offensive line. I think that's a priority a sneaky priority re-sign for me. I think he fits this new scheme very well. Like I said, he can back up right tackle, right guard, left guard. I think, and again, so I don't know if he's going to give him a shot to come in and maybe compete for left tackle as well. We'll see. But again, I took that more as it's open. Braxton's not coming in as the starter day 1, and that's it. It's sealed, it's set in stone. Amargaji and whoever else they bring in, whether they go get a young tackle in the draft, that person will also have an opportunity as well to compete.
Got another soundbite, and this soundbite really encouraged me a lot because I know that Ben Johnson has said that one of the big reasons he came to the Bears was because of Caleb Williams, but because I've been a Bears fan since the late 1960s, there's always this sense of doubt that something terrible is going to happen. And so I started thinking, maybe Caleb is just going to be another Justin Fields, that he can't throw on time, that he can't spot open receivers downfield and so forth. And maybe this is going to be a bad marriage between Ben Johnson, who has never coached a guy like a scrambling, very athletic quarterback, and maybe it's going to be a bad marriage. But he was asked, why did you come to the Chicago Bears, and what is it about Caleb? And this is what he said.
The out of structure, the off schedule the creation, that's what stands out the most, because that's really the way that this league's going right now, it seems like. As much as you want to make it pure progression, 1 to 2 to 3, there's just too much variety. The pass rush is coming down, and to have an athlete like Caleb extend the play and potentially find an explosive down the field, that's what gets me going a little bit. I get excited thinking about that. Because I haven't really been around that since I've been in the league. But I've been on the other side, and I've experienced it. And it's demoralizing when you're on the other side and you're watching that happen to your defense.
Danny, isn't that great to, that he is embracing the fact that his quarterback may not be able to accomplish everything that he's preaching, but he's still going to respect the fact that he's going to kill the opposition with his improvisational skills.
I took that comment there, Aldo, as him saying, all right, and similar to his opening press conference where he says, I'm not bringing the Detroit playbook and putting it down on the table and say, hey, this is it, guys, let's learn this. He's going to take Caleb, and he's going to allow Caleb to play at his best, right? So maybe he doesn't give him a structured offense like a Jared Goff had, where he's got to go through those progressions. Maybe he gives it some more RPO stuff, add some more flair to, and kind of let Caleb get on the outside and be, the playmaker, the guy that can make the off-platform stuff happen. So, this is I think this is the combination of him saying, all right, Caleb, I'm not going to pigeonhole you. Say, all right, you got to be in the pocket, and that's it. You got to be a pocket passing quarterback. No, we'll do pocket stuff. Obviously, that's the base. You need to be able to make plays in the pocket. But if if there's a couple times we can't block the guys up front, we're going to get you out. We're going to get you on the move. We're going to do some RPO stuff. We're going to do a bunch of different things that can play to your strengths and allow us to get an advantage on the opponent. That's how I took it. And how long have we been sitting here, Aldo, asking to have an offense built around the strengths of your players? We finally seems like I'm a Bears fan. I'm not as long as you have been a Bears fan, but I'm a Bears fan as well, and I've been scarred as well. So it's like everything seems like it's what we've been asking for with Ben Johnson. Hopefully, it all plays out on the football field.
Exactly, because I remember Lovey saying things like, "We're going to run the ball as soon as we get off the bus," and then you look at the stats after the game, and there were more passes than runs. And his offensive coordinator never really delivered on what he himself wanted. And so I've been frustrated since even before Lovey arrived. And hopefully Ben Johnson is a man of his word, and he's going to set up this offense in a way. There could be some times where he's going to have to throw 50 times again, because that's the weakness of the defense. You just want to take advantage of that. But you and I know, and Greg Braggs, I think, actually asked a good question about, the importance of play action. And Braggs phrased it as an opinion, saying, you don't really have to run the ball terribly well for play action to work. And Ben Johnson agreed with him. So let's get this plan rolling where you're taking advantage of the defense and you're committed to the run. And when you pass the ball, when that's what the defense is giving you.
We were watching Justin Fields, and we're like, or the year before, Justin Fields, and they had that running attack, and they're leading the league and rushing, and they're one of the best rushing teams. And then Getsy, for whatever reason, would stop running the damn ball. I'm like, even if you get stopped for a 2-yard loss, just continue to run, because just the threat of the play action, and then a quarterback like Justin that also tuck the ball and run as well, that gives you an advantage over your opponent, the defense. And even a split second, that defender, a second level linebacker, has to stop and pause and see what the ball's at. That gives you an advantage. And the fact that Getsy wouldn't just continue, pounding the ball this past season with Shane Waldron, forget it. That was a whole different story there. But it's like, it was so infuriating. And we sat here game in and game out, post-game show. They had 13 carries entirely throughout the whole game, 12 carries for the whole game. It's like, you got to keep running the ball. And when David Montgomery had 20-some carries or Khalil Herbert had some, a good chunk of carries, they would win the damn game. They put up some points on offense, right? So it's just like, it was so infuriating. You're right. You don't have to be a great running team to utilize play action. And again, split second, make that second level linebacker kind of stop in his tracks. That gives you guys an opportunity to make plays behind them.
I got a couple more sound bites. I'm just going to play one more, and then we'll start talking about the players at the combine and what you're looking forward to at the combine. This was actually a Greg Bragg's question about analytics, and I've always been interested in how head coaches use analytics. I remember when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl, their head coach, remind me, Danny, he was the head coach at the time. He went to Carolina. Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson said that he would actually, on certain times, he would hear from the analytics guy what percentage of the time a play to the right might work, or a play to the left, or a pass on a certain play. If he had a very compelling analytic to share with Peterson before he called the play, he would share it over the headset. And I thought that was really fantastic. And so I want to know more about how Ben Johnson is going to use analytics. He just gave a little clue here.
There's a very healthy respect from me to the analytic community. I think that probably comes from my background. I can't really help it, but I do have the computer science and math background, and so I do like to use that as a tool when making some decisions, not just in-game management, but also big picture view of how we want to build the roster and what we want to do offensively or defensively to attack the opposition.
What do you think about analytics in the Bears? Do you have as much respect for it as I do?
I'm torn, Aldo. I'm not a big analytics guy, and I understand, some of the numbers and in terms of going for it. And I fully do expect the Bears are going to be one of those teams that, just like Detroit was last year, that goes for it a lot on fourth downs. But we've seen it blow up on coaches as well. We've seen Brandon Staley, with the Rams, that blew up.
He failed, yes,
big time. And he's a big analytics guy as well. So, for every, Dan Campbell, you can also point again to a Brandon Staley. So it's like, it's pick and choosing your spots, right? There's certain times, to me, football was more about, are your guys bigger, stronger than my guys? Can your guys move my guys off their spots? Sometimes it's just you go up against guys that physically are imposing, and analytics aren't going to tell you, they're not going to help you in that situation. So I think you feel the game, you see how the game is going. Sure, you can always listen to, the percentages and those, so on and so forth and all that stuff. But it's to make a heavy set of decisions based off analytics, to me, is just not a good way to do it. But again, there are some coaches that have had success doing it that way, and some have failed miserably. So as long as there's a even, like a playing field between going for it or using analytics, and then just going your, eye test. All right, what am I seeing on the football field? How's this going? Where's the momentum at into the game? Because remember, if you make a decision based off analytics and you're up, say, 14-10 or 14-7, and that decision turns into a pick six or something bad happens where you lose momentum. I'm a big believer in football games. Whoever has the momentum, that rides that momentum into a victory eventually. So, that big back and forth. That's why turnovers are a huge thing for me in terms of teams that turn the ball over the most generally lose the damn football game. So that's the thing is like, that's where I want to see an even balance between going, using analytics, but also using what I say, just the eye test, what's happening there on a football field.
I totally agree with you. You have to use analytics in a very judicious fashion. It will never beat your gut feeling. If your gut feeling is against the analytics and you've been having a pretty good run with your gut feeling, ride it. Man, write it. Forget the numbers. There's a lot of times where the analytics go for it on 4th and 2, 4th and 3, because you're on the other side of the field. But the momentum of the game isn't going your way. And so they follow the analytics and you don't get it. Dan Campbell is a perfect example of that. When he first took over as coach of the Lions, he was very aggressive on 4th down, but he had no reason in terms of his team's performance to follow the analytics there. They weren't winning the line of scrimmage. They weren't doing certain things that would justify, going for it. So I picked Dan Campbell because some guy who is pretending not to be Don Burr, but is Don Burr is in the chat room.
Don Burner?
Don Burr burner. Well put. All right. So let us turn our attention now to the NFL draft combine. I want to start with a big, fat, overall general question, and that is, give me some of the names that you are most excited about seeing work out at the combine, and what particular workout. Like I've got some wide receivers that I'm, definitely, and running backs that I definitely want to see if they can run in the 4.4s. I got a list of guys. Well, who are your guys, whether they're whatever position? Please share that with us.
Yeah, so obviously, like I mentioned earlier, talking about my YouTube page, where I've been just focused in on the trenches. I've been focused on the offense and defensive lines, and going to the offensive line, where I think is going to be a huge need for the Bears. Now, the big thing is Will Campbell, and then the big thing about Will Campbell is his arm length. And I know this is the debate we've had every draft time in terms of arm length and all that stuff, but I truly do believe if he measures in with over 33-inch arms, I think he's a first offensive lineman taken in the draft, and I think he goes in the top 10 possibly, right? But if he's sub 33, I think then he goes to they can kick him inside to a guard, and that's where they can fall down into the teens most likely. So I think that's going to be key there as well. Some of the other drills I want to see is some of these offensive linemen in terms of their movement, right? In terms of their pass sets, how they move. There's a drill where they get up off the ground, they're flat on their stomach, get up off the ground, and they move left and right, back and forth. I want to see some of those, the ability to kick set. How fast do they get back to their spot? The feet is what you want to look for on the offensive lineman. So, and in terms of not on the field, sticking to the offensive line, Josh Simmons, the offense tackle from Ohio State, he's got a torn ACL, tore it in his week 6 versus Oregon. That was in October. I'm not sure when he got surgery on the ACL. We all know it's a 9-month to a year recovery. If that kid was healthy, that guy is a potential top 10 pick. Now that's how good of a tackle prospect he is. So how do his medicals come out in terms of how do teams look and see how is that knee rehabbing? What's the timeline in terms of when can he get back on a football field? So those are some of the things there as well. Sticking over to the defensive line. Some of the plays I've earmarked, guys that are not household names, but guys that I've followed through the Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine game. I just want to see how if they can continue that momentum that they've built, from those 2 All-Star games. Where one guy, Darius Alexander, defensive tackle from Toledo, 6'3", 304, 34-inch arms. Put on this guy's tape, and he can get in that gap scheme. He can get up the field. He can be a penetrator. He can be a guy that can disrupt the pocket. So let's see how he does here in terms of his mobility and agility, in terms of the skills here at the combine. Just like you, Aldo, I'm not really sitting there and kind of with a stopwatch and looking to see what the 40 times are for these big offensive defensive linemen. I want to see how they move. I want to see the agility. Some of these defensive linemen, I want to see how strong they are. How many times can he bench press? Stuff like that. So Darius Alexander is one guy. Tim Smith is a guy from Alabama, another defensive tackle, who I think was playing some nose guard, some 5 technique at Alabama. I think at the Senior Bowl, he showed the ability to again be a pocket penetrator, a guy that can get up that one gap, hit outside shoulder of an offensive lineman and get in there. I want to see how he does at some of these agility drills there as well. So, Savion Jones is a guy that from LSU, really showed some pass rush ability at the Senior Bowl. But again, he's a guy that only had 4 sacks last year. There's times where he shows that first step get off, and he's at 289 pounds. And I'm thinking, man, add another 5-10 pounds, kick him inside, make him a defensive tackle. But then you see him standing up from the 2-point stance and getting off the line of scrimmage at the snap and creating some pressure on the outside. I'm like, all right, maybe drop another 8-9 pounds and let's make him a defensive end, because he plays really good versus the run. Does a good job. He's got solid length to be able to press the offensive lineman, can take on some double teams. So Savion Jones is a guy I want to see how he does here at the combine as well. So those are coming guys. One guy, Tonka Hemingway from South Carolina, East-West Shrine game. This guy was unblockable in the one-on-ones, even in the team drills. He gets overshadowed by some of his other teammates there at South Carolina, but 6'2", 300 pounds. It doesn't have the big stats in terms of sacks and tackles for loss, but man, you put on his tape, he's always again getting upfield, getting into that quarterback's face, beating his man one-on-one. So Tonka Hemingway from South Carolina is a guy I want to see how he kind of takes that momentum from the East-West Shrine game and how he goes and moves forward here at the combine. So that's who I'm focused in on is the guys in the trenches, because that's where I think the Bears need to focus and kind of just multiply in terms of prospects and veterans and get those 2 lines, the offensive defensive lines, solidified. And like Ben Johnson said today, get them with some physical players in there. And that's what I want to see.
Love it. All right. One of the things I am most interested in seeing now, because for some reason I should have thought about this before, because I knew Gerald Everett was going to be released, but now taking a look at this tight end class, both in free agency, but especially at the tight end position, because if for some reason Cole Kmet fails this season, despite Ben Johnson's presence, then we need a new tight end. And so one of the guys that I like a lot is Gunnar Helm out of Texas. Danny, if you had a chance to see him, because to me, this guy could potentially be a better Cole Kmet in terms of inline blocking and then going out and getting open.
He's not, in my opinion, he's not yet the inline blocker that Cole Kmet is, but he's an interesting cat. I mean, he's a guy that had 60 receptions for 786 yards, averaged 13.1 yards a catch with 7 touchdowns. He is a pass catching threat. He's a guy I put down here as one of my sleeper tight ends, if you will. He's not going to go in the first or second round, but day 3, or early 4th round, he's a guy that can come in here and make some plays down the football field and be a nice complement to Cole Kmet. Like I was looking for, when I'm scouting for the Bears in terms of tight end, I'm looking for more of that guy that I can flank out in a slot. Some call him a joker position and whatnot. Guys like Elijah Arroyo from Miami, but he's got injuries that he might not be able to work out at the combine. Tyler Warren is a guy that'd be perfect here, but he's going to go first round, and Bears cannot afford to take a tight end in the first round. Harold Fanning Jr. from Bowling Green had 117 receptions, over 1,500 yards, and J2K right there comes in there. Perfect. 10 touchdowns, led the nation in terms of receptions and yards. He's just a big bulked up receiver, and he's a guy talking about being a nice pass catching complement. That's a guy we'll see what he runs here at the combine. The guy I really love is not an inline guy yet. Could be developed inline guy, but he's talking about more second round guy here. That's Mason Taylor from LSU, Jason Taylor's son. He's a guy at 6'5", 250 pounds. Natural hands catcher, a guy that can make plays over the football field. He'd be a nice weapon here in this offense with Ben Johnson. If you want to talk about some guy maybe in late day 3, keep an eye on Thomas Fedone III from Nebraska. 6'4", 241 pounds, slender kid. Will not explode off the screen in terms of athletic ability, but man, he runs some good routes. He's really strong at the catch point. If there's a safety over his back, he'll go up there and make a catch. And just one of those guys that you can see, a couple of years season down, making some big plays in big time games down the stretch there. So Thomas Fedone III from Nebraska, 6'4", 241 pounds, 34-inch arms, big catch radius. Like I said, physical at the catch point. Those are some of the guys that I'm looking at here in terms of some tight ends.
My man Carl is asking about Colston Loveland.
He might be a top, the first or second tight end taking Colston Loveland. He's a guy that 56 receptions, 582 yards, 5 touchdowns for Michigan. He's a guy that's going to be first or second round for sure. Probably first round is what I'm guessing right now. And I don't think the Bears are going to afford to take a tight end in the first round.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right. So let us look at the running back position, because I was actually surprised at how often both Poles and Johnson were asked about the running back position. I mean, we've got, first of all, a lot of accolades were paid to DeAndre Swift by Ben Johnson. He calls him Swifty. He says he's, very confident in him and so forth. I got to believe that Roschon Johnson is still highly thought of by the Chicago Bears. Maybe they're concerned about his injury history, but it almost seemed like running back is going to be a early day 3 position they'll target. But there's 30 players. There could be undrafted free agents at the running back position who can help an NFL team almost immediately. Your thoughts?
Well, I would say wait till day 3, and I had a couple of day 3 guys here that we could target. But the
Right.
way Ben Johnson talked about the running back position, the way he talked about everything starts up front with the physical offensive line and the run game, I have a feeling that one of those second round picks could be earmarked for a running back. I think, and that's the sweet spot for the running backs. I think you're seeing more love now for some of these running backs after what happened the last couple of seasons with Saquon and Derrick Henry. Some of the the move there as well. But there are some nice, intriguing guys you can get that second round pick area with what they have two high second round picks. But there's guys you can get in the 3rd round. There's guys you can get in the 4th round. Like you mentioned, there's going to be some guys late day 3 that are going to slip through the cracks, and you can get them. But if you're talking about that second round area, Amarian Hampton from North Carolina is a guy that a lot of people like. Big, strong guy. As a bell cow type of running back, a guy that can run in between the tackles there, has some good speed to be able to break those big runs. Good natural hands catcher in terms of as a pass catcher as well. That's a guy probably a 2nd round. A guy that for me, 2 guys, the Ohio State kids, Judkins and Trayvon Henderson. These are talented kids, man. Judkins is more of a leaner kind of runner, but good contact balance. A guy can break arm tackles. Also can make catches, pass catches, catch passes out of the backfield. Trayvon Henderson is a guy that, man, he's got that home run hitting speed, and he's another guy that is a natural hands catcher out of the backfield. So it's just kind of like, what flavor of ice cream do you want, right? There's 31 of them. Pick one here. So it depends on what they do. But the fact that he liked DeAndre Swift and he talked glowingly of him, I don't think that was just BS. I think he naturally thinks Swift can be an asset on this offense. I tend to think now they're going to look for more of that downhill one-cut guy, and guys like Omar and Hampton could be it. Guys like DJ Giddens, who's a little bit undersized, if you will, from Kansas State. He's more of a 3rd, 4th round kind of guy, but 6 feet 212. Is expected to run anywhere between a 4.48 and a 4.5. We'll see how he times there at the combine, but a very productive, very productive running back there at Kansas State. A guy I talked about before in terms of Laquan Allen from Syracuse could be a guy available in 4th round there. Another natural pass catcher, a guy that we've talked about before here, and I kind of had some Matt Forte visions when I saw him play there. In terms of his tape. Dylan Sampson, the kid from Tennessee, this is a guy that can be available there, probably 3rd round most likely. Devin Neal from Kansas, a 5'11", 220, another guy that can be a bell cow type of running back there as well. So I think he'll be available day 3. So it just depends on where they want to plug. But I definitely think they're gonna bring in a running back. I don't think they're going to get a free agent. I think they're going to find one, earmark 1 or 2, maybe find the sweet spot in the draft, whether it's 2nd round or they'll if there's a ton of them, if there's no run on the running backs in the 1st round or early 2nd round, now you can kind of wait and see what happens and who drops you in the 3rd round. And if there's one sitting there at the end of the 2nd round, maybe move up and get it. So I think that's what they're going to do, especially the way Ben Johnson spoke today. I'm more convinced now that they will draft a running back.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we'll be seeing multiple new names in camp, of course. But one name I'd love to see return is Ian Wheeler, who had an outstanding camp and then had that unfortunate injury in the last preseason game when it appeared he was going to make the squad. It's going to be tough to come back from the injury he had, because I heard he blew up that knee, but nonetheless, he's a name to kind of remember. Vizzle Joe had a question for you. He says, Danny, just curious, why would the Bears meet with Genty if they have no interest in drafting him? I think Hampton or Caleb Johnson would be better in the 2nd or 3rd round, Jack, you just mentioned. But let's get to the question of Ashton Genty. It's absolutely impossible that the Bears are going to draft Ashton Genty. He's going to be a top 15, maybe top 20 pick. Some people are saying top 5 or so. I don't see that. And in fact, I predict Ashton Genty is not going to have a great NFL career like a Saquon Barkley. I think it's a dangerous pick because of the competition he played. And when he played against good competition, like in the bowl games, he didn't necessarily play well until the 2nd half when his team was way behind and running the ball was a lot easier because they were guarding against the pass. What are your thoughts on Genty?
I think Jonathan's going to be a really, really good player. Now, I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be next Saquon Barkley, but I think he's going to be a guy that's shown in terms of the vision, the burst, to be able to get through that first level of that defense and hit those long runs. Good contact balance, good power. But I think, right. And, the Bears are not going to get a first round running back. And in terms of why they're meeting with them, Joe, is because you do due diligence, right? Because you set that, you go, you get to know the kid. This is one of the rare opportunities where you can meet anybody you want to meet with, and it's only a 15-minute setting, so you get just kind of get a feel for the kid in terms of, we put him on a board. How is his football, acumen, what dig into his background, because you never know, 4 or 5 years down the road, he could be a free agent, and now you could be interested in kind of maybe bringing that kid in. So you always meet with, they meet with everybody. Teams wanted to meet with Caleb Williams. The Ravens wanted Caleb Williams' physical, medicals last year. They had no chance of getting Caleb Williams, but you meet with the guy if they give you the time of the 15 minutes, whatever. You go and meet with them. So I think that's what they do that for, get some of their pertinent information, all that stuff. Plus, you never know how things are going to shake out in free agency. And then now you say, all right, and you're sitting there in the second round, and for whatever reason, Genty's dropped. Well, now you have that relationship where you met with them. Now you kind of talk to them and see what's going on, stuff like that. So, yeah, you always meet with these guys. Like we remember we used to go on Senior Bowl, although we used to ask, we interview a player. Have you talked with them? Yeah, I've talked to every single team. This is their chance to meet these guys and have some sort of connection and get some more information on them. So they meet with everybody as long as that player is willing to meet with them. I think Caleb started something different last year, and maybe a new trend here. We'll see how that goes.
One of the players at the Senior Bowl who did not meet with Bears coaches, and this was years ago, was Baker Mayfield. And Bears coaches told him, hey, listen, in a few years, you could be a free agent, or you could be somebody who's available and trade. We'd like to get to know you. And he was at that point in his life career a little standoffish and so forth, and it may have hurt him because he's been a free agent now more than a couple of times, and so maybe the Bears have stricken his name from the list just because he shunned them. But you're right. You got to talk to as many players as possible. And sometimes it's just about collecting information. Sometimes it's just getting to know the guy or whatever. You shouldn't bypass an opportunity for the player to talk to the administration, or the administration to talk with the player. Totally.
And also there's times where it could be a smokescreen as well. If a team is like say Dallas or whatever wants a running back and they have Genty, why is Chicago talking to Genty? Could they draft him here? And now you got a team thinking, are the Bears in play for a running back? So there's a bunch of stuff going on. There's a bunch of this is lying season. I think Greg famously said this is lying season. Everyone's trying to put up smoke screens and so on and so forth, all this stuff. But it's you talk to them because this is your only opportunity to talk to them. And I think because once they get drafted, they're property of a different team. You're not allowed to have access to them. So I think that's why every team meets with as many players as they can.
Okay. Now let's talk about the wide receiver position, because you have said before that this team needs a burner. They need somebody to stretch that defense out that will allow Caleb to work underneath and allow for big plays. You could do so much. A guy like Ben Johnson could do so much. So I am looking for wide receivers who are going to run that, that under 4.5, who's going to run 4.4, going to run, maybe 4.3 and so forth. Who are you looking at? What names should I be looking at when the combine has the wide receivers running their drills?
Yeah, I haven't dug deep into the receiver group yet because I've been studying the offensive defense line. But there are guys that are out there that are gonna, I think, run good times. For example, Tez. And I'm drawing a blank on his name, and I'm trying to look up here. It's the kid from Oregon, Tez Johnson. Sorry, he's a guy that's going to run a 4.35 or somewhere in a 4.3 range. So diminutive, 5'9", 5'10", I believe it was his numbers, or his height at the Senior Bowl. I have his numbers here real quick. Tez Johnson came in at 5'9", 156 pounds, right? But he's going to run a 4.3 something. So that gives you that element of speed you're looking at. Another guy that I like from the Senior Bowl, and I'm curious to see what he's going to run, is Jalen Noel from Iowa State. He's got punt return ability. He's a guy that they use him at Iowa State. If you watch how Matt Campbell use him out of the backfield, jet sweeps, the toss plays to him. So Jalen Noel is a guy that really looked really good at the Senior Bowl, in terms of creating separation, even making some acrobatic catches in the end zone. So I think that's a guy that really intrigues me. Matthew Golden from Texas. I think he goes late first, early second. So I'm not sure Bears are going to be, putting a bid there for Matthew Golden, but the kid from Texas, he really has some skill set there as well. A guy that has intrigued me, but I'm not sure in terms of what his speed is going to come out as is the other kid from Oregon, Trayshawn Holden. He's a bigger, more physical type of receiver, but he's quick, off the snap, wins right away in terms of, he was on the East-West Shrine game. His ability to win off the snap was impressive. He had one practice and he make 2-3 great catches and he was done. He didn't even play in the game. He was good to go. So Trayshawn Holden from Oregon, we'll see how he runs. He's not the speed burner that Tess Johnson is, but if he runs a 4.5 with that quickness, that's another area that where you can go and get it. But I do feel like they're going to have to add an element of speed. And the one thing we talked about earlier in terms of Antoine Randall, can he resurrect Tyler Scott? Because Tyler Scott is that speed guy, that 4th round pick from Cincinnati. He runs at 4.3, 4.4, but he's been invisible. We haven't even seen him, right? Other than a couple of times here and there on special teams. Is that someone that they could hopefully resurrect, and can he bring that speed guy, that speed element? But whether it's drafting a guy or maybe plucking a guy in veteran free agency, not on like day 1 or day 2, maybe more like later on in free agency, see who drops off, and we'll see what happens in terms of guys who get cut, possibly because of salary cap stuff. So, they will bring in, I believe, a veteran receiver. I think may draft one, maybe day 3. We'll see how it goes. But those are some of the speed guys that I'm looking at.
All right. I just put up J2K's question, which you have just addressed. Thank you for that. This offense could really, really take some huge strides. And I think one of the elements that is necessary is speed. I wouldn't mind seeing another speedy running back and definitely a one at the wide receiver position. And it could be, it could take off really early in the season. All right, let's look at some of the players at other positions. What lineman, offensive or defense, are you most looking forward to run drills at the combine? I'd like to get a sense of, because if you say watch for this guy, I'm definitely going to watch for this guy because I'm going to be doing a lot of combine watching over the next few days.
Well, one guy that and not so much what he tests at, but one guy that I'm really, really in love with is Tyler Booker, the kid from Alabama. Talk about a plug and play left guard. I've got his scouting report up on my YouTube page. If you guys want to go check it out, you could please do so. Tyler Booker is a guy that I think is going to be a plug and play left guard day 1 at the next level. Some guys that intrigue me. We talked about obviously with Will Campbell and his hand size, arm measurements. But the kid Ursary from Minnesota, big tackle. Some have him left tackle. I have him as a right tackle. He's a big, huge kid. We want to see his foot agility. How can he handle on the island at right tackle? He's not a left tackle for me. He's a right tackle. If he plays tackle, maybe you kick him inside the guard. We'll see how he hands up that. But that's a guy that I think can really make some money if he shows really well in these drills here at the combine. Some of the other guys, Emory Jones Jr. from LSU. Miles Frazier is the right guard, and I absolutely love him as well. He's a guy that every time I watched him, he just totally blew my mind. And I saw him first actually at the Senior Bowl. Wrote him down, went and did a scouting report on him. His report's up there as well. But his teammate, Emory Jones Jr., the right tackle, he's a guy he's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the athletic ability, but it's just technique is not there. And there's too many gaps where there's even times where you saw maybe it's better at guard. And sure enough, at the Senior Bowl, they had him playing some guard. And some scouts that there said, they see him only as a guard. So, Emory Jones Jr., but he has a nice mean streak, nasty streak. Let's see how he does here in the drills. And does he show that he's got enough agility to be able to man that right tackle position? I think he does. I just think he needs to be coached up, has some refinement in terms of his technique. But I think he could be a right tackle of the future. Emory Jones Jr. Drew Kendall from Boston College is a guy I see as a center. Boston College always has these good aggressive, offensive linemen. I think he's a guy that potentially as a day 3 guy where you can bring in. You talk about grooming some young guys as potential centers. He's a guy that I want to see how he handles in terms of, again, agility, quickness, so on and so forth. Jonah Monaghan is from USC, is a center that I've liked throughout the season. He's a guy that's played multiple positions. He's played left tackle, guard. Last year he was playing center. This year he's going in as the center. So we'll see how he does there as well. But those are some of the guys that I'm keeping an eye on, keeping a track at, and so we'll see how everything goes. But the main thing is something that we won't see on the field, and I touched on earlier, was that medical report on Josh Simmons, because man, that is one talented kid. And if he can, but the only thing is, like, you don't know when that kid's going to be available, and his medical check there at the combine is going to be huge for that guy.
Last week on this show, J2K really made a great case for the Bears to draft Josh Simmons if he is available at number 10. Certainly those 6 games he had with Ohio State were absolutely tremendous. But prior to that, in his previous 2 seasons, Josh Simmons didn't exactly light things on fire. Am I right or wrong on that?
No, I mean, I'm not saying he was well. First of all, he started at San Diego State. That's where he started there. He played right tackle.
And he sucked.
Well, he didn't suck, although, and he was good enough to get brought in as a starter at Ohio State. So that was his first full year at Ohio State 2 years ago at left tackle. I think he's a guy that is a prototypical left tackle. Actually, his report's going to go up on my YouTube page tomorrow. Actually, matter of fact, so he's a prototypical left tackle. He looks the part, and that's everything you want. He's got the quickness, the agility. He's got the size. He's got the length. But the only thing, and this is something that J2K and I kind of went back and forth on, it's not the player. The player is if he's healthy, he's a top 10 pick, probably even the first tackle taken off of in this draft. But it's how long do you have to wait for him? And I know ACLs aren't huge anymore. A lot of people come back, a lot of players come back from ACLs, but he tore it in October. I don't know when he had surgery, whether it was October, whether it was November. Either way, it's a 9 month to a 12-month recovery time. So if you're talking the 10th overall pick, the Bears, Ryan Poles took a guy 10th overall that we won't see play maybe at all this season. Maybe they redshirt him. I just think that that's something that they need instant impact if they stay at number 10. Now, if they trade down and they're in the teens or in the early 20s and you want to take a flyer on a kid that's a top 10 talent, okay, I can see that happening. And now you redshirt him or you wait till he gets better. Remember, Karan Margaji was coming off of a quad injury. And we saw how not having a training camp, OTA, how when he was thrown in the fire, he got lit up. Now, I'm not equating the talents of a Josh Simmons to a Karan Margaji. I'm just saying, it takes time to ramp up, to go to training camp, OTAs, learn the offense, get oiled up, if you will. You can't just throw a kid, say in November in a left tackle or in a guard or whatnot. But the kid's talent is top 10 worthy, no doubt about it. He could play left tackle or right tackle for you. If you fortify the offensive line with through free agency and you want to take a kid like this and just, like I said, redshirt him, and now he could be your left tackle or right tackle in the future, hey, you can do worse than that, right? But I just think that they can't afford to take the number 10 pick and not have him contribute at all next season.
Well, not that this matters at all, but I did do a mock draft when I traded down from the 10 position, and I think I got 2 first-round picks out of the deal. And at 27, guess who was there? Josh Simmons. And in reality, that could happen if the medicals come back out of the combine saying, yeah, he won't be ready until the 6th week of the season, 7th week of the season. He could be, like you mentioned, Danny, another Karan Amagaji, where he basically gets redshirted in his rookie season in the NFL. So I just feel like you, Danny, to take the risk on a guy coming off an injury with your 10th overall pick. This guy could end up being a superstar tackle, but it's too risky for me at number 10 to select.
If this was your first year as a GM, I understand. But Ryan Poles, I understand there's new coaching, but Ryan Poles under a lot of pressure. And you have 4 picks in the top 75. These guys have to be contributors right away, if not starters, year one. So I love the kid. I love the talent. I'm with you, J2K. If you're listening to this, I'm with you. This guy is like, it looks the part, everything you want in a tackle prospect. But it's just, first of all, Ryan Pace, I don't think Ryan Poles can't wait on another top 10 pick to for another year, because he might not be here in next year when the kids are on the football field. And the other thing is, like, you need instant starters if you're going to stay at number 10, and then just to wait for a kid for a year, you could be passing up, like I said, you could be passing up on a potential Pro Bowl tackle. But it's just, you need the impact this year with those picks.
Absolutely. Keith says, Aldo serious here. This show with Danny is excellent. If you guys get a TV offer, promise us that you will not turn into talking heads on the television. I would say
Aldo knows. I don't fit in that. I can't be pigeonholed in terms of what to say. I have my thoughts. I'm hard-headed. I think Aldo will agree with that. I believe what I believe because like Aldo said, I put in the work and then I get my conviction and I stick to it. So.
Absolutely. Hair Bear's in the house. He says, my God, Aldo, trying to get Poles out of town by an angry mob. Can you imagine all the pitchforks that would come out if he drafted another guy that was on injury for a year and a half? Yeah, I will not do it unless we trade down and he's available late in the first round. And now you've got 3 second rounders, maybe a first next season or another second rounder. Get that draft haul, which I think is the best way to build a team with young players, and supplement that with a big name free agent who will change the culture, will be a multiplier, and I think Trey Smith is the best candidate for that right now. Hey, speaking of guys who can make it an immediate impact, Carl from the Thigh and Smile show, whatever the fuck you call that show, he is petitioning for Mason Graham to the Chicago Bears. I love Mason Graham. I would love to have Mason Graham. What do you think of Mason Graham? And do you think there's any way possible that he could drop to 10, or would we have to trade up to maybe 7 with the Jets to acquire him?
At this point, I feel like you have to trade up to get him. Okay. But I mean, again, we talked about the combine guys. If Mason Graham goes and has a whatever for a bad workout or whatnot, he's not a guy that stat wise, lights up the stat board. But you put on his tape, he's always making an impact. Whether it's as a run defender, whether it's getting up into that gap and getting and penetrating. He might not get the sack, but he's always making that quarterback nervous and making a move off a spot. So he's an impact defensive lineman, and so is Kenneth Grant. And so is Walter Nolan. So that's why, we talked about at 10, Josh Simmons and that guy being a top 10 worthy. There's defensive linemen that are going to be top 10 worthy guys, whether it's Mason Graham. I know Kenneth Graham Kenneth Grant coming into this draft season wasn't thought of as a top 10 pick. He can make an impact. He's a big guy at 6'3", 6'4", 342 pounds. He not only can be a presence as a run defender, but he can also get up and, bull rush a guy back into the quarterback. Walter Nolan, I talked about, that was a guy, you'll come into the draft process. I was like, is he a first rounder? Is he not? Stat wise, he has 6.5 sacks a season. And, you put on his tape. And like I told you, I was watching Jared Wilson, and he made Jared Wilson look like a day 3 guy. And he was my top center coming into this draft process. And I'm like, yeah, the inconsistencies in Walter Nolan's game is there. You can see it on tape. But man, I always tell you guys, when you scout the flash of a player and how good of a flash. And when Walter Nolan flashes, he's sensational, right? So I think that's a guy that's now earmarked himself in that top 15, top 10 area as well. So, Michael Williams, the kid from Georgia, I like him a lot in terms of as an edge guy. A guy can put his hand in the ground, can also stand up and rush from a 2-point stance. It gives us that scheme versatility. So that's why I think if you stay at 10, defensive lineman could be that pick to go there, whether it's an edge guy or whether it's a defensive tackle. So we'll see how the board falls, but don't rule out a defensive lineman being that pick at number 10, especially if they stay there.
Is Howard Cross of Notre Dame too small to play the position?
6 feet, 300 pounds. Yeah, he's a guy that you'll bring him in. I think he's draftable, but I just don't. He's not. He's like day 3 guy for me right now.
See, does he remind you of Chris Zorich in that way?
Not Chris Zorich. I mean, he's a guy that I think he's effective in terms of what he does in terms of presence at the line of scrimmage. But Zorich was I remember talking about Zorich as playing a linebacker. That's what everybody talked about. They wanted when he brought him in here talking about bringing a linebacker because the athletic ability he had, the ability to get after it. He was a shorter, stouter player. But I think Zorich is more of an active agitator, a guy that was more quick twitch than a guy like Cross.
Cliff says the trade value chart says the Bears would have to give the Jets their third to move up to 7. So you'd be trading your 3rd round pick and your number 10 pick. Would you do that if Mason Graham is there, Danny?
I would not do that. I would just send number 10 and see who falls to me because, like I said, between Graham, Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan, Michael Williams, one of those guys is going to be there. At that point, we'll see how the board looks like. But I mean, I think I just sit there because of the fact you have so many needs and you have 4 of the top 75 picks. I just, and me, I hate giving up draft capital. So that's why I would just sit there and see what the board brings down for me.
Yeah. Hairbear says, see what you want about Chris Zorich. That dude had heart. I understand what you're saying there, Hair. That was his greatest strength. Chris Zorich's heart and how much he wanted to help the team win and his tenaciousness. Yeah, and Howard Cross, I think his biggest strength is just his quickness. Would you agree with that, Danny?
Yeah, in terms of Cross, he's 6. I think 6 feet 270 is what I saw him. So I just think the size I think is not going to be there for him to hold up. And you had 6 tackles for losses past year, 4 sacks. I just don't think he's a guy that's going to be able to hold up at the next level with that size. But you're right. He's a guy that can maybe come in and be a part of a rotation. Day 3 kind of a pick there. A good motor kind of kid. So I believe his dad played football as well. I believe his dad was a football player as well. So he's come from good pedigree. So I think he's a guy that, unfortunately, that size, it's hard to hold up at the line of scrimmage, especially when you're getting, big 300+ pound guys coming at you.
Oh, shit. All right. I want to ask you, what drills do you most look forward to watching? Like for me, I of course, like I think everybody else, you want to see the 40. You want to see somebody, run that supersonic speed, and you love to see the NFL Network superimpose it between players from yesteryear and see how fast they are in their first 10, their last 10, and so forth. And also that gauntlet where the wide receivers are going down a single line and they're turning to their right, catching a pass, turning to their left, and you get to see the agility and the focus that they have. Those are 2 of my favorites. Drills. What are some of yours?
So mine, I talked about earlier, the offensive linemen in terms of when they do that drop back to see their their feet in terms of how they get back into the shuffle or kick slide to their set spot. That's one I like with the offensive lineman. The defensive lineman, the one that I like was the one where they run that hoop and they pick up that towel that shows their bend and the ability, their ankle flexion. See if they can bend their ankles and get around the edge there. That's one I like for defensive linemen. I like the gauntlet drill for both the receivers and the defensive backs as well. The ability to see if they can make catches, with the ball flying at their heads at the high rate of speed there. And I like the defensive backs ones where they're backpedaling and you see their feet. You see in terms of their knee bend, can they get down low in terms of their hips? Can they backpedal nice, clean line back, and then they flip their hips and get back and they get to a spot where they go and they make a play on the football. So that's the drill I like for defensive backs. I just want to see their feet. I want to see their flexibility in their hips and their knees. And I also want to see them be able to open that gate, turn and run and get to a spot and make a play on a football. So those are some of the drills that I really look forward to.
Yeah, those are all fun. I'm looking forward to the combine this year more than I have in any recent year that I can recall, just because of the talent that's available. I think this is a really deep draft. No superstars, or not many, but it should be fun to see what some of these players do. All right, we got about a half dozen or more questions. So you ready to get to it, Danny?
Let's do it.
All right, Dan, first question from J2K. He'd love to see Jay Webster, Jimmy Horn, or Jalen Lane. It's not really a question, but those 3 speedy wide receivers he's kind of in love with. Do you have any thoughts to share about those 3?
Yeah, they're all quick twitch, fast wide receivers, and again, we're talking about bringing that speed element. So I think all of them have something that they would bring there as well. But so with the guys we talked about earlier in terms of Tess Johnson, also Noel from Iowa State as well.
Yeah, thank you, Hair Bear, for sticking around. He's got to go, and as always, he gives you a big shout out. Here's another question. This one's from Foster about the Clemson guard, Marcus Tate. Have you had a chance to study him?
That guy I haven't seen yet, Foster. I haven't seen Marcus Tate yet.
Yes, 22-year-old, 6'5", 315 pounds, played offensive guard for the Clemson Tigers, ran the 40 in 5.50. But we'll be taking a look at him, Foster, and we'll report next time Danny's on. By the way, Danny will be on next week. I'm pretty sure. I think we're going to review the combine, right, Danny?
I believe so. I got to check my schedule.
Yeah, me too. Samuel is asking about the offensive lineman Josh Connerly as a left tackle. He thinks that he can play there. What do you think?
Yeah, Connerly is something that I want to keep digging into because I saw him at the Senior Bowl and I like him better on the right side, but I saw him get blown up on there as well. Just too many inconsistencies with Connerly. I think he's got the feet and the athletic ability to play left tackle, but he's a guy that I haven't yet come to a decisive. Sometimes I just watch these guys and I'm like, and also with the system they play, it's kind of hard to depend on which game I have and getting a good feel for a guy. So I got to watch multiple games, but I haven't come to a decision in terms of Connerly if I like him at tackle, left or right, or do I like him inside a guard? So, but he's a guy that I will do a scouting report. I will be posting it up on my YouTube page. I'm not sure, maybe next week or the week after, but but Connerly's a guy that I'm struggling to get a good feel for. So I need to watch some more tape on him.
Okay. Mr. Munoz wants to know, what's your gut feeling about KC keeping Trey Smith? Do you think that they're going to, go to Patrick, clear out some money, bypass some of the other teams' free agents, and really bring back Trey Smith because of his importance to that offense?
I think he's the second or third best offensive lineman on that team behind Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey, depending on how you want to look at it. And we talked about how important that inside that defensive offensive line is, and they got three right there, right? So I just don't. We'll see, right? They're not going to transition tag him. They're not going to franchise tag him. So you're like, you're going to let the guy hit free agency unless you, like you said, we're going to negotiate some contracts and sign him prior to the start of the new league year, which they could do. But it just sounds like he's going to be hitting free agency, and a guy that's important for your franchise. I understand that they have some money invested in their tackles, but man, it's hard for me to see them let a guy like that go. Especially when you just came off a game, Super Bowl, where your quarterback was beaten, battered by the Eagles front four. We'll see, but it sounds like they're going to let him hit free agency. But like Aldo's mentioned, unless there's some sort of renegotiations and then they sign him before free agency starts, but there are going to be a lot of bidders for Trey Smith. I know, was it 25? I think he's 25 years old. I believe he is
25 or 26. He'll be 26 next season.
So he's in the prime of his career, multi-Pro Bowl selection. So, he's a guy that fits, power scheme. He fits, zone schemes. I think he's a guy that's going to be very, very popular. And I just say, if the Bears get him, great. But if they don't, it's not the end all be all, guys. There are other players that they can bring in that they can fulfill that spot.
Here's what I'm forecasting there. Unless the Chiefs tag him in some way, are able to afford tagging him, then if they do that, they'll probably retain him. Particularly if it's the exclusive tag. But otherwise, I think that if he's allowed to test free agency, somebody is going to come up with a bid, and it could very well be Ryan Post. That's just going to be impossible for the Chiefs to sign. And it could be $24 to $25 million. And I know a lot of Bears fans are against that. Danny said earlier, it's not my money, so if they want to do it, it's fine. But I am saying that contract in 2 or 3 years will not be the contract that we are all fearing and how it could disrupt the team. The key is that you draft quality players in the offensive line to offset that $25 million. So if you have 2 or 3 offensive linemen in your starting lineup and they are on their rookie contracts, that $25 million is nothing. And in 3-4 years, the top offensive guard is going to be making $29 million. So I do think that there is a big chance, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I saw kind of a killer look in Ryan Poles' eyes when the name Trey Smith came up a couple of times. And I really do think that Ben Johnson has been saying, listen, man, I'll buy you lunch for the rest of the year. Let's get
But
this.
they can't stop there, although, like I said earlier, they can't stop just at Trey Smith. Even if they give him $25 million, they can't. They got to get a center and maybe another guard. I mean, or you can wait till the draft. But I mean, they are going to have, technically they could have their tackles on, like your scenario. They could have their tackles on their rookie contracts, and Donnell Wright and Braxton Jones or Karan Amagaji. All three are on their rookie contracts, and you could go in and you can splurge on Trey Smith and a veteran center, and then maybe use one of those second-round picks on a left guard, or maybe wait till some cuts, some cap cuts, and later on, and after the first phase of free agency, and bring in another guy in terms of a left guard, and you fortify that. Great. Now you can go get some guys for depth. Maybe you can get a guy like a Josh Simmons and let him sit down for a year, and not because you have your inside fortified. So we'll see how it goes. I just don't want them to say, all right, we got Trey Smith, guys, we're good. No. You need to fortify that inside the offensive line. So Trey Smith plus more offensive linemen is how you do it.
Good stuff. J2K says, I don't want to enter this draft with another obvious need. I want the best player available. And I generally tend to agree on that. But now that you're into your fourth season as the general manager, you've got to target the problem areas, because you have unsuccessfully fixed those problem areas in the past 3 drafts and 3 free agencies. Another question, this one from Samuel. Danny, what do you think of running back Dylan Sampson? You mentioned him earlier. Yeah. Samuel thinks he's not getting enough love from the public media.
No, I agree. I like Dylan Sampson a lot. I think he's a guy that gives you some of that quick twitch, one cut ability to hit hit those long runs. Definitely a guy from Tennessee. I think third, fourth round could be that prime area where we can pick up a guy like a Dylan Sampson. I think he'll be very, very, very good. Now the only thing is how much of a is him and DeAndre Swift very similar. I'm not saying they're same kind of players, but are they similar in terms of body type, running style? They're both guys that are more quicker than fast, if you will. Guys that are pretty good in catching the ball out of the backfield. But I think they want more of an in between downhill runner that complements DeAndre Swift, and like guys like Omar and Hampton and some of the other guys we talked about. Trevor Etienne, I should say. Travis's brother is a guy. Well, he's not big, but he's a nice in between in the tackles kind of runner as well. But he's more of like that day 2, day 3 kind of area as well. So there are tons of running backs you can find here, but just from what Ben Johnson was saying today, it just seems like they are going to be hyper focused on getting one second round, probably is my guess right now.
Interesting. Jay Grizz wants to know about the defensive back from Notre Dame, Benjamin Morrison. He's coming off an injury. Could be a late round steal if he falls into the later rounds. Right now, Mel Kiper had him, I think, in the first round before, and his latest mock, he has him dropping to the second round, which I still think might be a little too rich for Benjamin Morrison, given how this draft is lining up. He might be available in the third round when the Bears pick. What do you think about Benjamin Morrison handling that safety position for the Bears?
Well, he's a corner, so I think he's a guy that injured. I haven't gotten to the corners yet, so I think Benjamin Morrison, some of that can, obviously another one that the medical checkup here at the combine is going to be huge for him. So I think he's a guy that we'll see what happens. But yeah, I haven't gotten deep into the safeties or the corners yet because I just feel like it's not that huge of a glaring need right now. I will get into more of those as the process continues, but I just wanted to hit the offense, defense, tight end, so on and so forth here, some receiver and running back especially.
Did you agree with Ryan Poles? He was asked by the guys over at Pro Football Talk, I think it was Sims that asked the question, what's the toughest position to evaluate? He said immediately the safety position is the toughest position to evaluate. And then he had the easiest was offensive lineman.
Yeah.
What?
No, for me, I guess each scout, each talent there has their own their own areas where they feel like it's tough positions. For me, it's the quarterback, because it's so much goes into the quarterback, because you can see a guy make a rip a throw 30, 40 yards on the football field, and frame looks good, arm looks good, he's got the size, he's got the feet, his motion looks good. But then it's like, you don't know in terms of all the preparation stuff, how he handles, how much is the coach feeding him? Are they giving him easy plays and all that stuff? So for me personally, the quarterback position is harder to kind of, get down and break, because you can take a look at a guy's physical skill set and say, all right, first round guy. But then there's other stuff that you don't see necessarily a lot via tape, that you'd be like, damn, I missed on that guy. Like Brock Purdy coming out of college was a soft throwing, solid quarterback, decent athlete, right? Went to Iowa State, ran a pro style system, so you liked all that stuff about him. But he fell in the right system. So somebody say Brock Purdy is a system quarterback, but still you got to be able to make those throws on a consistent basis. And they've got 2-3 years of tape on him, and he's still being successful. So that's one guy that I didn't think was going to have the type of success that he had. Some might say the 49ers didn't think so either, because they took him in the 7th round. So, but those are some examples where, like there are some quarterbacks that I thought were going to be, pretty good. Like there was a kid, I remember that this was one of my bigger fails in terms of scouting was Paxton Lynch. I believe his name was Paxton Lynch from Memphis. I love that kid coming out. I mean, he had athletic. He could do everything on a football field. I just didn't know he loved weed. He loved weed way too much in football career.
Is that what it was? I had not heard that.
The other thing was Russell Wilson. Because I have this thing with quarterbacks, is like, if you're under 6 feet, you're a guy that's a backup for me, right? And Russell Wilson was a guy, I loved his arm strength. I loved his ability to use his legs and be a dual threat. But he was 5'11". But the one thing I missed about Russell Wilson was that he was a super athlete, and just that's something you can't forget in terms of. And then they put him in a system where he was utilized well, where he was kind of hidden, and they put him in situations where what was his strength? Throwing that deep ball, using his feet. And then you backed him up with a solid running game, a good offensive line, great defense, and Russell Wilson becomes the Pro Bowl quarterback that it was. So those are things you've kind of learned over the years in terms of you can't always. I guess hit on every single position, but the quarterback position has always been one that's, for me, it's been a little bit difficult to judge. But yeah, the Ryan Poles thing, yeah, and the fact that he's good offensive line, but yeah, which offensive lineman have you drafted that's made a Pro Bowl there, Ryan Poles? So that's why I didn't get that. I didn't get that comment there.
Yeah, it's weird because I think, and Morgan, the previous offensive line coach, could be a very good offensive line coach, but he was just not well served by how they set things up with the coaching staff and the, offensive coordinator, and him being the run game coordinator, Morgan being the run game. There was just some mismatch there that I think really hurt the development of all the offensive line. Hopefully, Poles has got that corrected now with this new coaching staff, and whoever he brings in the offensive line and the young players that he has now will develop into quality players. Samo has an interesting comparison here about Nick Nash. He's asking you if you see any of Amon-Ra St. Brown in the play of San Jose State wide receiver Nick Nash. He says, I see it, and I checked the measurements and speed, and it's identical. You know what, Samo, I've looked at some Nick Nash highlight tapes, and I can kind of see the similarity. What do you think, Danny?
Nick Nash is someone I haven't done yet, but I did see some Amon-Ra St. Brown, and this kid I've been talking about right now is Jalen Noel from Iowa State. I did see some of that. Okay. I haven't comped the numbers and the measurements and all that stuff, but just the toughness. The guy, he's a thicker, looks kind of like a running back, but he's a guy that can do everything in terms of career separation, extend and get, even if he's in phase with a DB, put that extra gear and get away from him and went over the top. Again, talked about, being tough in terms of, making catches over the middle. They can use them multiple different ways, out of the backfield, jet sweeps, toss plays. So Jalen Noel is a guy that when I watched him at Iowa State, I'm like, man, this guy has a little Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a guy that I absolutely loved coming out of USC. But yeah, I mean, I'll take a look at Nick Nash, but Jalen Noel, that's why I'm a real huge Jalen Noel fan out of Iowa State.
Yeah, I've mocked him a couple of times, and so looked at some of his tape before doing that. Impressive young guy. I think there's going to be a few, more than a few day 3 wide receivers that are just going to surprise in the NFL. It's that kind of a draft. Can't say for sure, but guys like Noel and maybe this Chisholm kid out of Eastern Michigan, maybe they could be guys whose names will be familiar on Sundays in the NFL. Who is it that had an interesting question about how let's see, I think it was Mr. Inglewood. He says, can you guys please explain these comp picks for free agents that sign elsewhere? Why didn't the Bears get anything for David Montgomery? I can't explain it. Yeah. I do know that you have to lose more players than you sign in free agency, and then that makes you eligible for a comp pick, and then they determine on the quality of those players whether it's a 3rd round pick or 4th round pick, 5th round, or 6th round. That's all I know. Danny, you know anything else?
No, I can't. I've for years I've tried to wrap my mind around the whole process and how it works. But basically, if you lose a lot of good players and you don't sign a lot of prime free agents, you get a comp pick, right? And that's how it comes down to. And the year they lost David Montgomery, I forgot who the Bears went out and signed in free agency. I want to say was that the Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards years? Was that the one when they lost him? They got those linebackers and they signed Jones, the defensive tackle, and I believe that was the year there. So it basically the way I look at it, that's why teams like the Ravens, the Cowboys, teams that draft well and develop. Right. Those guys end up going. They don't go out and get day 1, day 2 free agents for these big contracts. And they get comp picks, 3rd, 4th round picks. Even the Eagles have gotten some picks as well too. So the name of the story: draft well, develop your players. Exactly. Eventually, those guys are going to outprice themselves and they'll leave. Now just bring in a whole new crop of young guys that you've drafted and developed, and that's the way it works. That just get that system. And the Eagles have done it. The Ravens have done it for years now. Those are 2 model franchises that you got to look at. One thing that I think Javi Roseman was today, or when he spoke to the media, they asked him about in terms of needs, and he goes, you always need defensive linemen. You never have enough defensive linemen, and that's what I love about Javi Roseman. He always builds through the trenches, offense and defensive line. You can never have those guys. Those are your backbone of your team, and that's why GMs that concentrate on those positions themselves, I think that's a success. Look at last year, guys. Harbaugh jettisoned Mike Williams. He jettisoned Keenan Allen, the big play receivers. And what did he do? He went ahead and he focused on offensive defensive line, and his team made the playoff. So that's something you got to build through the trenches. And there's examples all over the league of teams doing that and being successful.
All right, final 3 questions. J2K first. Danny, 2 guys I've heard you talk about but haven't heard an update. Defensive tackle Aeneas Pebbles and defensive tackle Cam Jackson. I'm still really high on these guys, but they aren't getting much love. Are you still a fan?
Aeneas Pebbles is a guy that I from Virginia Tech is a guy that I've really I like quickness. He's like a twitchy defensive tackle, but I believe J2K, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he came in at a tad under 6 feet. He's one of the diminutive defensive tackles at Virginia Tech. So I think he's a guy that height, weight, size combination is going to have him be a late day 3 guy. Cam Johnson, I believe talking about Cameron Jackson, the big guy from Florida. If that's the guy you're talking about, I have not seen him yet.
Okay. The next question is from Samuel. Who's your favorite player in this draft so far? Not necessarily the best player, but your personal favorite player and why?
Very good question. And I've been attacking these prospects, like I said, from the perspective of the Bears here. That's a very good question. I would say, man. If you're talking first round guys, I absolutely love Abdul Carter and what he could do potentially as an edge rusher. So that might be an easy out there. I'm sure. I do love, and I know I've been advocating for maybe not taking him number 10. I do love Josh Simmons. I love him as a tackle prospect. But if this was my first year and I had a veteran tackle, and I had a veteran for offense, like a team like the Chiefs, if he falls to the Chiefs, that'd be a hell of a pick for the Chiefs, right? A guy that they can let sit and wait. So I do love Josh Simmons. Guys in the like in the later rounds. Let me take a look at my list. DJ Giddens, I've talked about, the running back from Kansas State. I like him a lot. Dylan Sampson talked about, like Quentin Allen talked about. I like him a lot. I like Tez Johnson in terms of what he brings in terms of as a receiver. But if you're talking top tier guys, man, I'm talking about Abdul Carter, who's I think is going to be a guy that could be a difference maker, a guy that can make instant impact. It depends on how to utilize them, whether it's as an edge rusher or as an off ball linebacker. One guy that's getting overlooked, and I think is going to be a hell of a player. It's just that he doesn't fit the profile. Is Jalen Walker from Georgia. He's a linebacker, sideline speed, can be an edge rusher. He's a guy that if you can bring him in and play him, he's kind of like what Micah Parsons was in his first couple of years, where he was an off-the-ball linebacker, and then in third downs they started using him as an edge rusher, and then finally they converted him over to a full-time edge rusher. Jalen Walker from Georgia is a guy that I absolutely love. He's a dog, and that guy is going to be a stud. It's just you got to get him in the right system, in the right scheme, and he's got to be utilized. He's not a guy that could be on hand in the ground, defensive end, game in and game out. He's an off-ball linebacker, but he's a guy that gives you some extra pass rush speed as well off the edge. So Jalen Walker is a guy to keep an eye on as well.
Great stuff. All right. I think I've been saving this question for 45 minutes because I thought it was a great way to end the show. Brian Gilmore is asking, Danny, what would be your perfect draft scenario for the Bears? So let's do a little fantasy thing. And let me set the scenario for you. Let's say we do pick up two good quality offensive linemen. I'm not going to name names, but two offensive linemen, one a center and one a guard. And now you're going into the draft knowing that you got those two offensive linemen. So what would be that kind of fantasy scenario that when we talk immediately after the draft, you tell me they did it exactly the way I wanted?
Well, if I could, but obviously this is hypothetical. I would love to be able to trade down, right? Get more picks,
yes,
and get within the mid-teens or maybe top 20, and then now you get best player available. Whether it's, is it a guy like Josh Simmons? Right? We talk about is an offensive lineman. Is it a defensive lineman that drops on? Maybe Kenneth Grant's available there. Lower in that lower teen or top 20. That would be my ideal scenario. But we can't hypothetically say you need another team to come up and get the number 10 pick. We talk about this draft not being so star heavy in the top. So if say they stay at number 10 and in the scenario that Aldo just put out there, they get two offensive linemen, veteran offensive linemen. They have a need, say for example, at left guard. I would not take an offensive lineman number 10 if I stayed there. I would take the best defensive lineman, and I'd hope it'd be Mykel Williams, the kid from Georgia, the defensive end, can come in. He could be a guy that could be an opposite of Montez Sweat. He's a guy that you can kick inside as a tackle as well on certain pass situations too. So that's a guy I'd get at 10 if I stuck there, and then in the later rounds, top of the second round with those two picks, one of those I would use on my guard, and that would be Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, the left guard who played left tackle this year when Josh Simmons got hurt. And I absolutely love Miles Frazier, the kid from LSU. He's a guy who played right tackle, who's played right guard predominantly, but he's a guy that I would love to have as well. So that helps solidify one of the other guard positions.
All right. I hate to do this to you, Danny, because I've done this before, and I hate it when people do it on social media, especially before NFL free agency. But I've been in a kind of a mock draft frenzy.
You love those mocks.
So here I go again. This to me would be almost my perfect scenario. It is trading down to number 12 and picking Armand Membu, who will probably play inside, but everyone is saying he's got the possibility of potentially being a an outside tackle, especially in case somebody gets hurt. You can move him out there and feel fairly confident that he will have his own. And then now I've acquired the 26th pick of the draft, and I'm taking a gamble on Josh Simmons with the idea that potentially we could redshirt him for a year because you've got Braxton Jones at the left tackle position under his last year of the contract, and you got Karan Amegaje. So there would be no need to rush Simmons back, and hopefully you can get the player we saw at Ohio State in those 6-7 games that he played. Then at 72, Ashton Gillette, the edge from Louisville. I'll be honest with you, I have not seen a ton of tape on him, but I have it on good word by a couple of scouts that this guy is a late bloomer who could potentially be an impact player. And then at 81, 148, 149, Gunnar Helm, my tight end, CJ West, a under the radar defensive tackle, although at the Shrine Bowl game, I don't know if he's under the radar anymore. Then Malachi Moore, the safety. I've addressed the safety position because we've got 2 starting safeties who are in their last year of their contract, and one of them has been injury riddled. Ollie Gordon is now competing with Roshan Johnson as my power back. And then Tyler Batty, haven't seen any tape on him, but I've read some reports that he's got some promise at the edge position. He's the kid out of BYU. And then Efton Chisholm, the guy that we talked about earlier in the show, a kind of Cooper Cup potential talent. So when you look at this, Danny, tell me where I've gone wrong.
Oh my God! Well, I mean, I love the obviously the first 2 picks, the Membo and Simmons. Obviously, Simmons we've been talking about the entire show. Membo, I think if he's to play tackle, I think he possibly could play right tackle, but a lot of people I know like him at right guard, so that would help solidify right guard. That was, he's a strong, thick body player, good, solid power. So he's a prospect that obviously I don't know who you passed up to get him, but I think he's a solid prospect. Josh Simmons, I love already. Galota, I have not seen. He's an undersized edge rusher, and last time I saw, he was under 220 pounds. So I'm not sure what kind of fit he'd be here in the scheme. So I'm not sure if that's a good pick there for you. Gunnar Helm, okay. I think is a solid pick there. I believe that was that 3rd round pick, 81. Pick 81 is about 3rd, 4th round. Mm-hmm. CJ West, I have not seen yet. Malachi Moore, okay safety. Ollie Gordon, we're talking about a one cut downhill. He's that guy. He's in between tackles kind of runner. Tyler Batty is a big, tall, long defensive end out of BYU. Could be a rotational guy. And Afton Chisholm, we talked about a guy that could be a slot guy, possibly a returner. So, I mean, I love the Josh Simmons pick, obviously for future. The Membo could be a right guard starter for you, and Gunnar Helm. So I am not loving this draft.
Okay, well, thank you for your honesty. I will never see you again on this show. No, I love the mocks just because you can mock them. That's the number one reason you make fun of them.
There's a guy actually talking about these undersized edge rushers. There's a kid to keep an eye on from Virginia Tech, Antoine Powell Ryland Jr. He's a guy, a former Florida transfer. He's a guy that is twitchy. Again, undersized. So, looking at what Dennis Allen likes to do, he likes those, bigger, longer defensive linemen. So I'm not sure he's a scheme fit. Because you brought up, Gillette there in that mock, these are guy, Antoine Powell Ryland Jr. from Virginia Tech. Watch him. Talk about a twitchy, very productive edge rusher. That's a guy maybe day 3 area.
Okay. And in a future show, we're going to have Emery Hunt on. And one of the things I like about Emery so much is that he pays a lot of attention to small school players, and he finds gems every now and then. I mean, he was a big proponent of Tariq Cohen before the Chicago Bears drafted him, and he's had some other successes in terms of identifying certain players. So we'll have him on, and Danny and Emery can compare notes on some of the small school players. In addition to that, that, the schedule, that's NFL Network. If you have NFL Plus, you can watch the combine there or on the NFL Network if you have that through your cable service. These are just the next 3 days. Tomorrow, the actual drills start with the kickers working out, and there'll be a bunch of meetings going on, team interviews, and then also the defensive backs and tight ends arrived on Tuesday. They get their medical exams on Wednesday, team interviews, running backs, quarterbacks, and wideouts. They are involved only on off the field stuff on Wednesday, as are the offensive linemen. On Thursday is when we start to get measurements for players and on field workouts. That will be the day to start tuning into the drills. That should be a lot of fun. And then on Friday, we'll see the defensive backs and tight ends on the field workouts and lots of interviews. So we'll be covering it all here on the Barroom Network. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone on site, but we will aggregate some of the best stuff I can find on social media and on websites. And again, I want to remind everyone that Danny Shimon has a new YouTube channel, and it is Shimon Draft Scout. So everyone should head over there and subscribe immediately after this.
My Josh Shimon report should be up tomorrow, not by tomorrow, but for sure Thursday.
Excellent.
So yeah, we got that guy, and then you guys will see why I like this kid so much. And I think J2K is a huge fan of Josh Shimon as well. So it's a shame that he tore his ACL. That the kid was going to be a top 10 pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've heard top 5. Definitely first offensive line taken. I'm looking forward to that, and I will share it on social media and let people know. J2K says, Danny, make sure Aldo sends you my message. What message is that? And Jay Gris says, thank you, everyone. And I thank everyone in the chat room. We'll be back here tomorrow. We got kind of a fun show tomorrow. We're going to start at the same time, 9 o'clock. And Johnny Santucci and I are going to interview somebody who knows a lot about football, but also food. So we're going to do a lot of food. It's Fitzmagic. A lot of people follow him on Twitter or X. And so we'll have some fun talking about the grub and the Chicago Bears. Danny, anything else you want to plug before we head out?
No, just appreciate all the attention and the advertisement for the YouTube page. Like I said, I will be out there posting some reports. I will also try to maybe after the combine and give a little brief review of what I thought in terms of who helped themselves, specifically in terms of obviously the Bears needs, and maybe we could post that out there as well on the YouTube page. So just trying to put some more content out for our fans and our listeners, and obviously fans of the Chicago Bears. But if there's anything you guys want or need or feel like it's lacking, please reach out and let me know.
Danny is great at fulfilling requests, so make sure you let Danny know. And then Bearsky Film just reminded me that on Thursday I'm going to be on with him on his podcast, and so we're going to have some fun talking about football, and they might get me worked up over a certain topic so that I can deliver a viral moment rant. We'll see.
Non-sports topic?
What's that?
Non-sports topic?
I got a few of those. Trust me. Johnny Santucci and I, a couple of weeks ago, we talked politics for like over an hour.
Don't do that.
But you know what? A lot of people commended us because outside of me losing my temper just once or twice, we were very civil to one another. So maybe you and I will do that sometime in the off season.
You and I agree, I believe, politically. So I don't think we'd have a conversation there.
Well, Johnny Santucci can bring in a conservative, and then the two of us will face the two conservatives. But it is a great time to be alive, especially if you're a Chicago Bears fan. I'll see you hopefully back here tomorrow. And tomorrow's Wednesday, so we might have a couple of other shows on. Best way to stay on top of stuff is to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get alerts on your device whenever we go live. And, of course, stuff is on our audio podcasts. We subscribe to Podbean, and they distribute it out to Spotify, to Apple, just about every podcast platform. All of our shows are on there as well. So for Danny Shimon, I am Aldo Aldo Gandia. We'll see you next time. We're still not off. I hit end stream.